If I had fatigue and I didn't know the root cause, I'd approach it with herbal medicine targeted to these three basic pillars. So, we're going to be talking about what these three pillars are, what fatigue is, like biochemically, and some herbs to target those different kinds of fatigue. So, the three pillars that basically cover every other branch of fatigue are one, sleep efficiency, two, metabolic efficiency, and three, total stress. Off of sleep efficiency comes recovery, energy production, hormonal balance, mental health. Off of metabolic efficiency comes nutritional adequacy, energy production, and hormone balance. Then, off of total stress comes physical, lifestyle, emotional, mental, and perceived stress. So, these are three pillars that you can target and focus on with herbal medicine and other approaches that will cover basically everything that could be causing the fatigue. So, fatigue is such a broad term, and it can come from nearly anything. So, the exhaustion of a chronic illness, for example, a trying time in life, grief and loss, postpartum or like convalescence, hormonal imbalance, sleep issues, emotional issues, chronic fatigue syndrome in itself. The root causes are literally endless, which is what makes it so frustrating when you don't know what the root cause is. Like sometimes obviously we get fatigued and we know that we've just had an illness. We're like, okay, that's why I'm fatigued. I need to support my immune system and re-nourish myself. Simple. Sometimes we don't know where this fatigue is coming from, and that's what makes it so frustrating. But covering all of these three pillars should help. They should help. They cover most bases. Okay. So the other thing about fatigue is that it's technically different from sleepiness. So sleepiness being when you feel sleepy, and exhaustion. They're like three different things. So it's impossible to reduce fatigue to one biochemical change because it's just so broad. But a lot of fatigue comes from alterations in the production and metabolism of ATP. And ATP is like the base energy of what our cells use. So during periods of physical and mental exertion, which remember, this mental or physical exertion can be the obvious, like you've just run a marathon or you've just finished a degree or something like this, but it can also be underlying illness, underlying chronic illness, emotional stress. Lifestyle can cause like physical stress, even if you don't feel like you are stressed. Lifestyle and environment can be stressors. And ATP, and in these periods of stress, whatever that may be, ATP, that energy is rapidly consumed to fuel these cellular processes, which leads to the accumulation of adenosine, which is a byproduct of ATP breakdown. This adenosine acts as a neuromodulator in the brain and inhibits neuronal activity and promotes relaxation and sleep. So adenosine, this is really interesting because this is also how coffee works. So adenosine is created, it's like the sleepy, relaxy hormone, and it's created by breaking down ATP. By you literally using energy, you create sleepiness or tiredness. And this is how coffee works. So coffee will block the adenosine receptors. So your body is still using energy. Your body is still breaking down the ATP and producing adenosine, but the adenosine cannot stick to the receptors and make you feel tired because the coffee is blocking it. And obviously this isn't permanent, and when the coffee starts to like float away from the receptors and leaves your body, then all the adenosine comes in and it's like, oh, like we can finally dock, we can attach, and then you feel really tired. That's when you get the crash. So this adenosine is the thing that makes us fatigued. In addition to adenosine, other biochemical factors such as neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, and hormones like cortisol and adrenaline and inflammatory cytokines can also influence the sensation of fatigue. These molecules play key roles in regulating mood and motivation and energy levels, and their dysregulation can contribute to the feelings of tiredness and lethargy. So there is like a suggestive basis, that biochemical basis for what's happening with fatigue. An imbalance in neurotransmitters or inflammatory cytokines, hormones. If you think about, let's go back to the inflammatory cytokines, histamine. If you've ever taken histamine blockers, then you'll know how drowsy you can feel. So there's definitely this link between the immune system and feeling tired and exhausted. So those are some ideas for some basis. Disruptions in mitochondrial function, which can come from nutritional deficiencies and oxidative stress. So mitochondria need specific nutrients in order to do their job, and the mitochondria, obviously, I think we all know this, they give us energy. They give us energy for living and everything. And if we don't have those nutrients, then they can't perform their job and we feel fatigued and tired. Alterations in the balance of neurotransmitter and hormones can also impact cellular energy production and contribute to the biochemical basis of fatigue. So there's a lot there. The thing that I always say is we don't need to know why something, or we don't need to know how something is happening. We don't need to understand something in order to approach it. That's why traditional medicine is so valuable, because we've got so wrapped up in trying to understand how everything works, but we don't need to know how everything works in order to help ourselves. One study defines fatigue as a neurological illness, and this is a quote from the study: may be caused by abnormal function of the immune system and neuroendocrine system, infections, or nutritional deficiency, and which is what we've just covered. And they separate fatigue into chronic, central, or peripheral. Peripheral fatigue is the normal and expected fatigue after exertion. Central fatigue is fatigue that occurs without any cues. So that's your that feeling of, why am I so tired? What have I done? That's central fatigue. Chronic fatigue is, very vaguely, as there is lots of theories, is thought to be a combination possibly of both peripheral and central fatigue equals chronic fatigue. It's just a theory. A little bit more about chronic fatigue, which is in itself a syndrome on its own. It's not necessarily just feeling tired for, you're feeling tired for a long time, sort of it, but there's a lot more to it. The main way this syndrome differs from general fatigue is that there are observable changes to the autonomic nervous system. Vagal tone is increased even at rest, and the sympathetic nervous system is chronically activated, which in studies has been indicated by plasma catecholamine levels are raised. But that being said, with this video, we're just going to stick to general fatigue. Like I said, we don't need to know why the fatigue is happening, but that's just some interesting background. So let's zoom in on some specific categories of fatigue and how herbal medicine works to help in specific cases. Okay, so post-viral fatigue, which includes post-COVID, and this is a really big thing for post-COVID, is post-viral fatigue. So ginseng, we're going to start with ginseng for post-viral fatigue. In traditional Chinese medicine, it's known as the king of herbs and is generally understood to be cortisol regulating, which means that it balances cortisol, whether it's too up or too down. Research puts it down to its alkaloid ginsenoside, which also stimulates the immune system and possibly part of its long-term use in relieving fatigue and associated with long-term illness. One study did conclude that adaptogens help the body to produce more HSP7-2, which is a protein that aids in stress response and recovery. So this increased production of HSP7-2, they always have the most boring names, could help explain how adaptogens improve stress tolerance and physical performance. Okay, so it's also an immune modulator and it can regulate cytokines. Generally, ginseng is considered to be stimulating energetically and should only be given to people with the vitality of age and base wellness to be stimulated. So this is like acute post-viral fatigue. I wouldn't necessarily use ginseng for someone who's really been suffering for a long time and they're just on their knees with it, because it's quite stimulating. It's like giving caffeine to someone who's really Well, it's not caffeine, don't like that's not caffeine. It's not stimulating in that way, but it should be wary of people who don't have the reserves to be stimulated. Okay, astragalus, the next one. Astragalus has been used for over 2,000 years in Chinese medicine as a tonic for a depressed immune system. So an immune system that's maybe not responding how it should, not mounting such an effective response to an attack. And this tends to be like a cold, depleted state. It tends to be paired with sort of malnourishment or periods of malnourishment or convalescence or something like this. This person who would benefit from astragalus specifically could be somebody with fatigue, lack of resilience, malnourished, or in convalescence, and generally depleted, and their body is generally underperforming. So there might be other areas in their body that is just underperforming. Needs a little bit of boosting, tonic, tonifying. And it actively activates immune cells, and studies have shown an improvement in natural killer cells and white blood cells in people who are infected. Astragalus has been researched in context of chronic fatigue syndrome, where it is particularly effective, especially post-viral associated chronic fatigue syndrome, to potentially relieve some fatigue through modulating the gut microbiome. I found that really interesting. So the gut microbiome is another thing that can make us feel really fatigued. That could be partly to do with the immune system. If anybody's ever had any intolerances or allergies, they will know how exhausting it is to be eating something that you don't know you're intolerant or allergic to, and then you're just tired all the time. So that's part of the gut microbiome. Lemon balm is the next one. I love lemon balm. It's a tropho-restorative for the nervous system, which means it builds it up, nourishes it, restores it. The volatile oils cross the blood-brain barrier, which is quite rare, and act as somewhat of a messenger between the gut and the nervous system. The gut being the home of about 80% of the immune system. And it's considered more of a relaxing, anti-anxiety, gut-soothing herb. So we can see the connection here between, obviously, post-viral fatigue can support that, but specifically associated with the gut as well, if they've got like angry gut issues going on as well. There is also strong research to show that it's antiviral. I believe it's been researched in herpes. Yeah, quite effective antiviral herb, which again makes it specifically good for post-viral fatigue. Mushrooms are the next one, like reishi and cordyceps. They're very well studied, very well studied to improve and modulate immune function through their polysaccharides and triterpenes, but it's obviously going to be more than just the polysaccharides and triterpenes. It's a mixture of both, or a mixture of other compounds. So it's not that we can extract that and use the whole mushroom. One study divided the ways that the medicinal mushrooms support fatigue into 7 different categories. 7 categories of how mushrooms support fatigue are blood glucose regulation, supporting liver function, which they believe is through increasing blood circulation, promoting liver protein synthesis, and supporting overall energy metabolism. 3, hormone regulation. 4, improving and modulating immune function, including natural killer cells, T helper cells, macrophages, and cytokines. 5, improving cardiovascular function and blood flow, and antioxidant activity, and improving muscular function through improving glycogen and oxygen use. So that's quite an important one as well. It's like how well do you have muscles? That definitely supports energy use. And how well are they using glycogen and oxygen? Okay, so going to move on to our next category of fatigue, which is insomnia-related fatigue. Insomnia is a burnout indicator. So this means that it's used to indicate burnout, basically. And there's a chance that the fatigue came before the insomnia. So often people think, oh, I have fatigue because I'm an insomniac and I'm not resting. But actually, sometimes 50% of the time it can be the other way around. So you could have had fatigue that created the insomnia. So burnout can cause insomnia through chronically elevated cortisol levels and endocrine dysregulation. Of course, there's also a chance that the insomnia came first. That's obviously, yeah, that happens. And in this case, it should be supported with sleepy herbs, which I have done a whole separate video on. I'll try and link it somewhere. I'm not very good with technology. But I have done a whole video on my YouTube channel on how to sleep with herbs and the kind of the biomechanisms behind sleep. Okay, ashwagandha is one of these herbs that can help insomnia related fatigue, can improve sleep onset, sleep efficiency, sleep time, and sleep disturbance. So there's several different aspects of sleep. It's not just like sleep done. There's so many, it's so complicated. And it's thought to work on modulating cortisol levels through modulating the sympathetic nervous system. So that bringing that stress down, basically. Traditionally in its home country in India, so it's an Ayurvedic herb, it has been used to restore the nervous system through periods of intense and exhausting stress and protect sleep. And its name, somnifera, literally means sleep. There are, a plethora of other herbs and strategies you can use to approach insomnia as its own unique thing, which will be in that video. Okay, next category, nutritional fatigue. So nutritional fatigue is that fatigue that could be related to not getting the nutrients your body needs to make energy. And maybe you have the best diet, but maybe your gut's not breaking down the nutrients, maybe it's not absorbing the nutrients, maybe there's low stomach acid, or maybe there's so many different factors to nutritional fatigue. It's not just that you're not doing the best you can for yourself. We're so easy to say, oh, you're not eating the right thing, but like, what is the right thing to eat? Nobody knows. So maybe you are doing the best that you know how for yourself, but there could be some things missing, and possibly there could be something up with the gut that's not absorbing it and using it. So the right vitamins and minerals are not just helpful, they are absolutely essential to build basic forms and energy, and perform basic energy metabolism. There's literally nothing else that the body can use to do this. So we need those vitamins and those minerals to do this. B vitamins are trending at the moment. I'm seeing a lot about them. They are a hot topic in this area of fatigue specifically. Many of us are deficient, and the deficiencies can lead to all sorts of neurological, muscular, and metabolic changes. We get a lot of our B vitamins from plants, who make the B vitamins for the exact same reason as hormones and as metabolic balancers. There are hundreds of other vitamins and minerals that we're missing that are essential to energy. For example, iron to transport oxygen, magnesium and potassium to relax the nervous system, so activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Even vitamin C contributes to feeding the mitochondria. So I don't necessarily believe in breaking it down and focusing on one specific nutrient and taking a specific targeted vitamin for this. I mean, if you know that that's what you're deficient in and that's it, then go for it. But I do think that in nature there's all sorts of vitamins and minerals going on in the same plant, and we just need to have a multivitamin and mineral, like a good quality one, or try and get it from food if your gut's absorbing it. Because also we don't know the extent to what each different vitamin and mineral behaves in the body. So we know that vitamin C feeds the mitochondria and it's good for the immune system, but what else is it doing? We don't know. So just try and get all of them. So if you think that your fatigue could be nutritional, then I'd approach with a high mineral herbs and supplements first. So some of the high mineral herbs, obviously they don't cover all bases, but they are very high in like essential trace minerals. Horsetail is very high in magnesium, zinc, and iron. And this, I would say, is specifically indicated. I've always thought of it as sort of giving a backbone. It's an ancient plant. Like it's probably, am I right in saying it's the oldest herb on Earth? I think it's one of the oldest herbs on Earth, around during the dinosaur era. Very old. And this is so it carries this ancient wisdom, like a backbone, like an ancient grandmother. This is the kind of energy that I would be looking to give someone with horsetail. And it's very resilient, obviously, so somebody who needs a bit more resilience, and it's seen and survived millions of years of change. If you're into astrology, I'd say this is definitely this like Saturnian Capricorn energy: structure, backbone, resilience. Okay, nettle is also another plant that's rich in minerals, and the seed is as close as we can get here in Britain to a native adaptogen. There's also sea buckthorn, but there's not too much research on it. But I know nettle seed has been considered as it's not a true adaptogen, but it's very good. And nettle as a whole has been traditionally used as a tonic for convalescence and building blood and generally nourishing the body, especially if you've got someone who has dysmenorrhea and they're bleeding a lot on their period, they're losing all that iron. Nettle is so high in iron, be a perfect tonic for somebody who feels like their fatigue is related to this kind of nutrient loss. Then we have ashwagandha again. I think ashwagandha is maybe the key herb in this whole video. It's especially iron rich and can support iron deficient anemia. Being a root, it's also full of carbohydrates and fats, really nourishing. In fact, the roots are typically indicated for nourishing, and they contain the highest concentration of nutrition in a plant. Again, ashwagandha would be especially indicated for nourishment paired with a hormonal imbalance or sleep issues. So there's a more specific indication there. So now I'm going to suggest 3 broad steps for generic fatigue when you don't know the cause. And if you know the root cause, then great, approach that too. But I guess the take-home message for all of this is that you don't need to know the how or why, like I said before. So in this part, we're going to dive into those 3 pillars and what we can do outside of herbal medicine. So number 1, improve your sleep. Now, sleep and fatigue create a vicious cycle of not sleeping well. Like we said before, it's a bit of a chicken and egg. Either one can come first. This too tired to sleep sort of feeling after a bout of insomnia is partly down to the fact that the circadian rhythm hasn't had time to reset itself. We break down a lot of hormones during our sleep, and also because the more tired that we get, the harder it is for us to regulate our emotions. And we could just be wired with anxiety and fear or stress that's ruling the body's priorities. So we kind of lose the ability to regulate our emotions when we're tired, and we could just be that sympathetic nervous system is overtaking, like stress and anxiety, which is stopping the sleep. Interestingly, studies have shown that perceived sleep quality has an effect on fatigue more than actual sleep biomarkers, which suggests, as we all know, that there's a big mental component to the feeling of fatigue. I'm not saying that the reason that you're tired is because you believe you're tired, not in the slightest, but there is definitely this perception of fatigue adds to the fatigue. So if you think you should be more tired than you are, that can create that. Okay, so some things that we can do to approach balancing sleep is following an organic circadian rhythm and adapting to light and food cycles as much as possible. We respond so much to light, and we're only just scratching the surface of how every cell in our body responds to light cues. So light is essential. And one really simple, easy, quick trick to reset the circadian rhythm is to have that bright light as soon as you wake up in the morning and some food. Your body responds to food and light to balance that circadian rhythm. Okay, improving gut health and the ability of the gut to produce hormones. So that would be reducing inflammation, and then working on stress management and perception, and not just trying to reduce stresses, so actually reducing how you perceive the stress that you're facing, or managing how you perceive that stress. Balancing blood sugar, fixing hormonal imbalances, and fixing GABA, which you can modulate GABA through herbs like passion flower. Okay, and if you want to go straight to the sleepy soporific herbs, the herbs with the strongest effects, if you want to just cut all the corners, which you shouldn't do, you should definitely try it holistically, but you want to just cut all the corners, you're fed up of not sleeping, try some wild lettuce, indicated for musculoskeletal pains particularly, and particularly resistant insomnia. Obviously, do check the dosages of these, don't just go wild. Wild lettuce can also be, what's the word? Psychoactive in some people, so be careful. Valerian is another one, quite a strong one, indicated for cold constitution people with anxiety and tension. For me, valerian is like a hot, heavy blanket. It's really, I get quite anxious sometimes, and it's like, it feels like it's pushing you down into the bed. It's really lovely. Californian poppy, which is indicated for nerve pain that's keeping you awake, or like anxiety as well. And passion flower, which is not as strong as these ones. It's not really a sedative, but it reduces the looping thoughts. And if you're not sleeping because you're thinking so much and there's so much going on in your head, then passion flower is probably the one there. Okay, let's look at pillar number 2, reducing stress. So some just general things we can do to reduce stress. Reducing total environmental stress by getting outside in the nature and sun. So this is, like we said before, the environment that you're in and your lifestyle plays a massive role as stressors on the body. So just touching some grass. I know this is like a meme at the moment, but just seeing the sunlight and touching the grass, that does so much for your stress. Reducing mental stress, reducing physical stress by reducing systemic inflammation. So if you've got like any just chronic systemic issues going on, try and sort them out. I know that's way easier said than done. But this comes into the whole like reducing stress bucket of improving fatigue. Reducing perceived stress as much as possible. So how can you work on how, like that, I've done this so many times myself. You have a really like tough day and actually you're doing okay. Like you feel like you're doing okay. You get to the end of the day and you're like, oh my gosh, that was just crazy. Today was crazy. And I feel really tired, or I should feel really tired. And then you just build that up and you're like, yeah, I'm really tired. That was awful. Like, ugh. But you can change that perception and say, do you know what? Stressful day, but I'm doing okay. And I'm just going to put that over there. And I'm just going to focus on here. And I'm actually doing okay. If I really like look at myself now, I'm actually okay. Just that perception change, Stress modulating herbs. So these are your adaptogens that are going to help to modulate the whole HPA axis. So let's look at some specific adaptogens really quickly. Ashwagandha, we know this one. Our favorite one in this video. Specific for cortisol imbalances, possibly circadian disruption. Then we have rhodiola, which is for high achieving people with the reserves to be stimulated more, but just need support coping with the load. So rhodiola is, I consider it for someone like an athlete or an entrepreneur, someone very high achieving, like let's go and get life, but they just need a little bit more help coping with that bucket of stuff that they're doing. Milky oats, so nourishing. Oats and oat straw should have been in that nourishing one because they are full of B vitamins and minerals and other vitamins as well. Milky oats is that like sap from the oat, and it's a adaptogen, possibly. I don't know if it's a true adaptogen, but it's very good at rebuilding a frayed, nutritionally depleted nervous system. Codonopsis and astragalus, which is specific for that reduced immune system, such as in chronic illness. Okay, and the third category, improving metabolic efficiency. So this is how can we support our body in actually creating the energy and getting the energy from our food. So improving nutrients, including B complex and iron. So again, we need those nutrients in order to do all the basic functions of metabolism. We can fix the gut and inflammation and leaky gut. That would help to absorb the nutrients from our food. We can balance blood sugar. Obviously, those spikes up and down can create fatigue. insulin resistance, if there's any like amount of insulin resistance, we can focus on that with maybe cinnamon, can help support blood sugar levels. Regulating light exposure. Now, light, as I said before, is so important, and it does have an effect on improving metabolic efficiency. So just seeing the sunlight, you have no idea. We have no idea to what extent that helps us, but it really does, and it has been shown to improve metabolism. Yeah, loads of studies in that area to do with light exposure and like weight regulation or insulin sensitivity. So yeah, that's an important one. Balancing the bacteria. So this is your prebiotic, probiotic food. Obviously, that's a little bit difficult if you already have gut issues. So sort the inflammation and the leaky gut out first, then introduce the pre and probiotics. But there's also, in my other sleep video, I talk about the way that this bacteria has its own sort of circadian rhythm, so that can come into sleep. Okay, improving liver and liver detox function, because the liver does so much more than just break down our food. It stores nutrients. I can't remember what nutrients it stores, but it stores nutrients and it plays a big role in our energy metabolism as well. It's or other things we can do, balancing insulin resistance, we spoke about that before. Ingesting enough of the right nutrients for biological function and metabolic efficiency of energy production can be a byproduct of reducing total stressors. So again, our metabolism is dependent on the stressors. All comes down to stress and stressors. So some pro-metabolic herbs that we can lean on. Cinnamon, as I said before, is a very strong insulin regulator. To support insulin, you can lean on berberine as well, like berberis. So I think you can get isolated berberine, but I would just have it in the herb. These should not be taken long term, but cinnamon you can take long term every day, unless you're on blood sugar. Unless you're diabetic and you're on insulin, then yeah, talk to someone about taking cinnamon because it can mess with that. Just a little warning. And inulin-rich powders or inulin-rich herbs in teas or powders, they are really good. They have, that's inulin's a fiber. It's really prebiotic or probiotic. I think it's prebiotic. Really good at balancing that blood sugar. Some prebiotic herbs, some inulin containing herbs include elecampane, chicory, burdock, and dandelion. Then we have green tea, which is prebiotic and really supports mitochondria function. Chamomile can relax the nervous system. It's also a little bit prebiotic as well. Bitters can improve liver function. In fact, they really do improve, a little bit liver function, but they improve bile flow. Milk thistle protects the liver if you feel like that might be an issue. So just some interesting notes to finish on then. So research on idiopathic chronic fatigue, meaning chronic fatigue that they don't know where it's come from, or everyday fatigue, tends to center around the adaptogens, especially rhodiola, ginseng, rhamania, and eleutherococcus, which I haven't said about in this video because all of those are stimulating. And personally, I wouldn't use them for somebody who has chronic fatigue because, again, they are very stimulating, and the person with chronic fatigue might not be able to handle that. I'd go a bit gentler. One meta-review found that most ergogenic or fatigue-relieving effects of these are due to the stimulation of the central nervous system via catecholamines. Obviously, this can't be all that's happening in the way that they reduce fatigue, because catecholamines, including adrenaline, of course, they make you feel more energized, but they'll also burn you out long term. But these herbs do something to improve the energy utilization and function long term. So it's not just that they're stimulating you, they are also improving energy utilization. And likely that could be to do with nutrition. So just to finish with some other ideas, you can address any adrenal fatigue. Conversely, lack of exercise and movement massively contributes to fatigue. So if you're fatigued and you don't have a regular movement, I know that sounds controversial, but even just some yoga or some walking or just something gentle to keep moving, because not moving contributes to the fatigue. It makes it worse. Thyroid as well, that can be sort of, that's a hot topic at the moment as well, but low thyroid can also contribute to fatigue, and GPs are very well known for not particularly picking up, being sensitive to the thyroid levels. So you could be sort of getting there, sort of, everybody should support their thyroid in this world. Insulin resistance, again, not like full blown, but some level of insulin resistance can contribute to it. Just an idea. If the fatigue is paired with other symptoms such as digestive symptoms, that adds to the picture of the root cause. And as mentioned at the start, you can tailor your efforts towards that root cause. So that's all I've got for there. And I hope that helps some people. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and let me know. Yeah, I'm keen for any questions.